Do, do, do,
Da,
do.
da, da, da.
Da-ba-da-ba.
Oh, rookie mistake.
Rookie
Yeah.
mistake, man.
I had the volume up. I should know better than that. You'd think I know better than that.
You would think so, but I've kind of gotten used to it after 4 months. This has been like 4 months.
That is shocking to
Isn't
me
it
that we've been
crazy?
doing this for that long.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because even at our Propel Dessert Nights, we had talked, this is just, we're going to test run this through May.
Right.
Like that was our goal, was 3 months, March, April, and May. And we haven't even once considered actually.
That's because
beginning
you
this
and I
thing.
have so much
Yeah,
fun. We
that's
don't
because
care
it's
whether
our
anybody
favorite
ever
part.
watches
yeah,
it or
Brad
not.
and I will start our own YouTube channel.
Exactly.
if
And
this
we
ever
would be
gets
the
going.
only one that ever watched it.
We would, but
But we would have so much fun.
oh yeah, it's been good for our relationship. It's been good for my emotional health to be able to be up here. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been
Yeah.
cool to see God work.
And should we tell them the surprise coming? No, we better not. That
no,
there's something
let's
big's
wait.
coming.
Let's wait till we have all the details worked out.
Okay, yeah.
'Cause
So
that's still
hey,
in
just hang.
secret.
See, now you have to stay tuned
Yes,
and what have
there
you.
is an exciting surprise. But
Yes, coming up.
yeah, and just my favorite part of all of this has been seeing the different individuals who we either don't have access to reach physically because they live across the country,
right.
or that were at one point disconnected from God, disconnected from church, and they're connecting through this, and
Yeah.
that's been so exciting to watch.
And to watch the views. I think this has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
So we're going to actually get started.
Yes, we are. Let's get
Because
started.
because I think you're going to just talk a lot tonight. So
You're not wrong.
I have your brain teaser.
Oh, cray.
And here we go. You ready?
Cray, like oh crazy.
Okay, here you go.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm
All right.
ready.
Can you name
Probably not.
3? Let's start over.
Okay.
Can you name 3 consecutive days without using the words Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Day 1, day 2,
That-
day 3.
I don't think that's it. No.
What? Okay, can I have a redo then?
You may
'Cause I
have a
answered so
redo,
quickly.
yeah.
So 3 consecutive
I
days.
thought you really had it.
Okay.
3 consecutive days,
Okay.
not
December
using
25th,
Monday, Tuesday.
December 26th,
No.
December 27th. I feel like all of these are correct answers. Okay, what's the answer? What's the answer? I feel like you're just upset because I gave 2 answers that you hadn't thought of.
It's true. Because I'm trying to think of a way that's not correct.
Okay.
No, that's not correct.
Okay, what's
Are you ready?
According to Wikipedia, what's correct?
I forgot.
You forgot the answer?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one.
Yeah, but I think
I
my
thought that
2
was a good
answers
one.
are correct. Viewers, if you think that my answers were correct, I said day 1, day 2, day 3, or
That's not even
December
close.
25th,
No.
December 26th, December 27th. How is that not accurate? Those are 3 consecutive days.
You make a
Can I have
point.
half
You
a
make a
point?
point.
Can I have half a point?
Hey, everybody. we're going to skip right on to. My name is Brad Maddox, and I am the outreach pastor here at Crossbridge Community Church. And this is my good friend, Jordan Chitwood, the adults. No, I did it again. The young adults pastor.
We are starting off strong.
Oh, my gosh. I'm honestly excited about tonight because
Yeah,
what
I'm
we've
looking
done
forward to
a
it.
few times is we have actually done kind of our journeys, our next step journeys with some of the pastoral staff here
Yeah.
at Crossbridge. And it is your turn tonight. And so I am looking forward just to having a discussion. I think what helps when we do this is it not only helps people get to know us better, but sometimes people can relate to what we've gone through.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I think sometimes people, I won't say they put pastors on a pedestal, but they think they're different than everybody else.
Oh, I agree.
And that is not true at all.
Preach.
We struggle.
preach sometime.
I should preach sometime. Oh, well, anyway. So
Yeah, no, I agree.
that's actually what we're doing tonight. And so we're just going to jump right in. Because
Yeah.
your story.
I'm going to talk a lot.
Yeah. And how long have you been at Crossbridge now?
So attended Crossbridge?
No,
Just
no, on staff.
Yeah, so I joined staff, I got voted in December 8th, and I joined
Of
staff.
last year?
Of last year, 2018.
18,
I
okay.
joined staff January 1st, 2019.
Right.
So officially, I've been a staff member for 9 months, but I was an intern for 6 months before
Right.
that.
Okay. And then you actually grew up in this church.
Yeah, so my family moved to Fort Wayne in 2001.
How old were you then?
I was going into first grade, so I was 6 years old.
Wow.
So I've been at Crossbridge since I was 6.
Wow.
Just crazy. So that's what,
Yeah.
17 years?
Is it kosher to ask you how old you are now, just so people know?
I'm 23.
23 years old. There you go. So
Yeah.
anyway, here's what my first question to you.
Okay.
When and why did you get involved in church ministry?
Yeah. So I never had whenever people talk about that's the exact moment I came to Christ.
Yeah.
Like I never had that moment
Yeah.
because I grew up in a Christian home and it was just so natural to me to love God. So I don't remember when I came to Christ, but I remember the exact moment when I decided I wanted to become a pastor.
Really?
And we were at the Fingers backyard for small group, sophomore year of high school, and there was a bonfire. And everyone else was playing frisbee. I know you're like, oh gosh, here we go.
Here we
We're
go.
talking so long already. So we were sitting around. I was by myself sitting around the fire, and I remember seeing if you look above a fire, you see kind of like
the
heat waves.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, me too. Well, I remember seeing those heat waves and looking through it, and behind the heat waves, the image is blurry. Like you see, okay, it's like shaky and stuff. And I remember just God placing in my heart, Jordan, you're going to help lead people with blurry views of God to Christ someday.
Wow.
And I remember texting my dad that moment saying, Dad, I feel called to be a pastor. And his response was, why? Not that's awesome, not I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Way to go, son.
I know.
You're a moron.
Yeah, and so it was at that moment when I realized,
So you would feel that you were literally called into ministry.
Yeah, that was one of those times when I actually feel like God was giving me the light of passage, the rite of passage, to say, hey,
This is it.
this is what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of those types of stories, but not everyone that is in full-time ministry or any kind of ministry, honestly, actually feels that. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
Well, it's
volunteer.
actually rare
You
often.
can volunteer to
Yeah.
be in ministry, so that's really cool. That you have that moment that you can go back to. We talk a lot about that as stakes in the ground,
Yeah.
and that's one of those times that. Do you ever get to that point of have I made the right decision, and you can look back at that time and say, this is it?
Yeah, well, for a long time, even though I knew eventually I'd end up in church ministry, my 5-year plan was to be a history teacher 3 years out of high school, or 3 years out of college. I said, hey, I'll volunteer at the church, I'll intern maybe, but then I want to get my career set, I want to start paying off loans before I do church ministry because church ministry doesn't pay very well. And so I knew, I'm like, hey, if I want to get married, if I want to do these things. So really, it wasn't until probably senior year of college, no, junior year of college when I switched majors from history to Christian ministries that I realized I'm going to do this right away out of college.
Cool. So, talk about some of the big events, the monumental events that have kind of shaped who you are as a person, because you've lived a lot of life in the. I've lost 20, whatever you are now.
2-3. Yeah.
2-3, 23 years.
Yeah. A lot of life in some good ways and some bad ways.
Sure.
There's really been two monumental events that have happened in my life. First one, going into last semester of college, senior year, my dad passed away. And he used to be the lead pastor here at Crossbridge. And so Brad, Bruce, Kim, my mom was her husband, his husband, and so we all knew each other, and we were all family. Like that. That's how I grew up with the staff. Was like my second family. And so when my dad died, it didn't just feel like I was losing my dad. It felt like I was losing the church too. And that was huge for me because when you go through suffering and life events, the person that you can always rely on is your pastor. But I had just lost my pastor.
Right.
And I was dating the daughter of the soon-to-be next lead pastor who would be replacing my dad. And as much as I loved the idea of Bruce taking the position, there was still that hurt just knowing that he was replacing my dad. Not just literally because he become my dad, but then also just the lead pastor position as well.
Right.
And so that created, for a while, just kind of this nasty image of the church for me, because I knew it was the right thing. I knew it was honorable. It was God-led. But I didn't want to go to church at all senior year.
Sure.
Because the image was broken to me.
Right.
So that was huge for me. And really it took 4 or 5 years, probably senior year of college. Junior and senior year of college was when I started to regain my trust in God again. I never completely walked away from God. And I never, ran, etc. But I definitely didn't pursue God for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
He was just kind of a byproduct. Even still knowing that I was going to be in church ministry. I would tell myself, I'm going to be in church ministry and then go fail to addictions for the next 3 or 4 years. I just knew I would be able to come back. But then junior and senior year of college, I started to go to counseling, and I confronted my pain head on, and it was just so cool to see how God worked.
Just quickly explain, a terrible life event like that you had to work through. How has that helped you in ministry?
Yeah, I would say that's probably my biggest asset in ministry for a few reasons. The first is before my dad passed away, I knew that God loved people that were suffering, but because I hadn't experienced suffering myself, I didn't know how. And so I started reading the Bible differently from the perspective of a God who pursues the oppressed, who pursues the suffering, who pursues the lost. And that was kind of just eye-opening to me because it stretched me to realize that God truly is, as the psalmist writes, close and near to the brokenhearted. But then another reason why, how that shaped just, my ministry and has shaped it is it gives me a passion to then do the same of pursue broken people and to say, hey, I've been where you are and I've made it out stronger because of it.
And not necessarily broken in the exact same way.
Exactly.
But
different ways.
Just in different ways. And you can relate on a very close level because of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that have lost their dads that I'm a big brother for now.
Sure.
And then there's people that have lost, different family members, or there's individuals who have gone through cancer, who have lost their job, where God has shown me that through my suffering, he's opened my eyes to realize everybody experiences suffering on different levels.
Right.
But often the way they want to be loved is pretty similar, where I would say as long as you're being authentic, then they feel loved.
Yeah.
Most of the time, not all the time. But it wasn't until I experienced suffering and wanted people to be genuine and authentic with me, whether or not they had lost their dad,
Right.
that was what I longed for.
Right.
And I imagine I would argue that's probably, the most effective way to love people is just be authentic.
Yeah, that's cool.
The second monumental thing.
I'm glad you remembered, because I was going to actually come back to that.
Oh, that's good.
Second monumental.
Yeah, second monumental, and I actually taught, a couple weeks for the baptism service. I preached on senior year. Well, it was really junior year. Like I said, I started to regain my trust in God again junior and senior year, and I joined staff voluntarily at a church in Anderson. And it was an excellent church, great mentors, great staff, but the elders maintained a lot of the power and the control. And long story short, because I preached on it, if you want to hear the full story, go to the baptism service on our YouTube channel, Crossbridge Community Church, Fort Wayne, #ad. I was getting ready to stay at the church full time after college when the elders started spreading rumors about Marissa and I. And they weren't even like aggressive rumors. They were just big enough to attack my integrity, and integrity is huge for me and
Sure.
Marissa. And it was my first ever job. It was only a volunteer position, but it was my first ever job of the church. And so again, like I said, for 4.5 years, I had tried healing from the pain I had experienced and my image of my father-in-law just replaced my dad. I don't know if I can trust the church, all this stuff. Where it took me just by surprise, like, God, this is really what living for you is like? Like, I feel called to be, yeah, exactly. And that was the answer, like, yes.
Yes, this is it.
Yeah, and I felt called to church ministry so strongly, but I experienced a lot of those yes replies very early on.
Yeah. It's hard to explain when you go through an experience like that, because the church should be the safe place, especially if you're...
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that, as far as what were the feelings you were going through when that first happened?
Yeah. So when I call it just betrayed by the church I was on staff at. When I was dealing with that, I went from 0 to 100 real quick. I wear my emotions on my sleeves.
Really?
Yeah, spoiler alert. But along with that, again, I realized that I'm a gifted public speaker. I don't need to use my gift for church ministry. I can just be a motivational speaker and still lead people to Christ that way. And so for the first time, I started wrestling with, God, I don't know if I can do this. And so the way that I kind of went around, like got through that, poetry has always been a huge way I process things, just writing in general. And I just started writing authentic words to God.
Yeah.
And so one of the poems I actually came out with that I released this year was called Church Hell's Ringing. And it was just a poem about my experience with how the church is supposed to be that safe place, but it's often a place where individuals experience hell-like situations.
Right.
And I'm not alone. Like, I would argue every Christ follower at some point, if they are being challenged and stretched by their church, experiences some type of living hell on earth.
And I think one of the things that we are very passionate about here at Crossbridge, and you bring to the team, and we as a church have really started embracing and trying to embrace, are people who are broken by the church.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many out there who are de-churched or detached from the church because of something that's happened, either by another Christian or by the church itself, and so you can relate on that level too. So
yeah, absolutely.
love that.
Yeah.
So tell me why Crossbridge then?
Yeah. If you, like I shared at the baptism service, if you would have asked me a year and a half ago if I was going to be on staff at this church, I would have laughed. Mostly because I didn't want to be that cliche guy who tried to go back to their home church and be on staff. But secondly, because everyone knew me here, or so I thought, and I wanted a fresh start.
Yeah.
When I left for college, I was in a very unhealthy spot with maturity, with spiritual growth, with who I was. And a lot of the people that I left and went to Fort Wayne or went to Anderson with, they didn't see that 4-year period of me growing and wrestling and maturing. And so coming back, I was like, man, do people only remember me for what I was? Stuff. So, why Crossbridge? This was the biggest reason why I decided to come back. After I experienced such an unhealthy church and unhealthy leadership, it was so important for me to find a church where the elders and the staff was in a healthy place.
Right.
And for those of you watching, here at Crossbridge, it is so cool. And I've been in an area, I've been at a church where the elders either had 100% of the control or the pastors had 100% of the control. And their relationship was not good. That's not the case here at Crossbridge. Trust me, I have a lot of walls up and a lot of barriers and red flags that go up. It is so cool how close and relational all of our elders are, and how much the elders believe in our pastors.
And protect us.
And protect us and support us and pray for us, and ask us how they can, help us.
They always have our back.
Yes, they always have our back. And I love, it's because I grew up in this church. All of them are family to me.
Right.
The staff is family to me. Like, it's so cool. While I'm married, like, the lead pastor is my father-in-law, I thought of him as a father figure before that happened.
Right.
And think of you as a family member, as a father figure, I don't know, grandpa, I don't know.
Grandpa, definitely.
But just, and so that's why Crossbridge, why at the end of the day, I could find another church. I could have joined the staff somewhere else.
Right.
But, yeah.
And one of our passions as a church is to help other churches come up with that. I mean, Bruce is great at going to other churches, helping other churches establish that kind of relationship, because the churches that are healthy, the churches that are striving, have that kind of thing. Not that we don't have our own issues, but it is an amazing place to be. So
Yeah, I love it.
yeah. So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk a little bit personally about your own faith walk. And we talk a lot about next steps, so these will be a lot of next step kind of questions and what have you. And I think that's what people can relate to also, because we're always taking next steps. So just explain kind of what role has God played in your life as you try to figure out these next steps.
Yeah, so especially with the different monumental experiences that I went through, like I said, I never walked away from God, and God was a huge rock for me once I figured out that I was allowed to be real with God. And so as I was processing next steps, because of the different things I had gone through, it was so cool to see God show up in different ways, small ways like this. When I transferred to Anderson University, and Marissa and I were going to get a job, we got married, we needed to have a job to live off of. It was my biggest stressor. I was terrified. I was like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just need you to, provide. Like you do, like you're supposed to do. God, provide, because I can't. There's only been twice in my life that I've clearly heard the voice of God. And the second time, the last time I did, was I had just received a job offer at Anderson University. I had started working there, and I remember walking out of work and hearing and me saying, God, thank you so much for this job. and I clearly heard the voice of God saying, "I've got you, Jordan."
Wow.
And it's only happened twice where I felt God's presence, but it was in that moment, junior year after Marissa and I got married, that my faith became real to me. I was like, wait, God, you actually still talk to people? Like, you're still there? You're still present? With all I had experienced with the suffering and loss of my dad, it was that gentle and subtle reminder that says, God's got this. He's still in control. So as I began taking next steps, whether it was with my degree, when I joined the volunteer position staff at church, when I transferred back to, Crossbridge, the biggest reminder has been going back to that voice and saying, God, I don't physically hear you now, but I did.
Right.
And you still have me.
Yeah.
In the palm of your hands.
That's awesome. You said something interesting, I think is important to reiterate, is you said you came to a point that you realized you could be honest with God.
Yeah.
Did you ever yell at him?
I've cussed at God.
See, this is what I love, because
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people that's either watching now or going to watch this that's going to shock.
Yeah.
And so just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. I grew up kind of the same idea where, you want to respect the name of God, you want to respect authority, and I still believe that you do. But I also think it's a sign of respect, and God appreciates our authenticity. And after I had experienced the loss of my dad, like I said, I kind of just went numb in my faith for 3.5 years until junior year. And then when I saw it my loss start affecting Marissa, my wife, and affecting our relationship and the depression, I remember just blowing up on God. Dropping the F-bomb, more than once, ripping him apart. And it was after senior year of college. This was a very common thing where God just met me where I was. But senior year of college, I went to see the movie I Can Only Imagine. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I'm not a huge fan of most Christian films simply because of how cliche they are. I think a lot of them are powerful. But I Can Only Imagine was the first one that wrecked me. And I remember going home and writing, God, I forgive you. And that might make you cringe a little bit, okay? Because it makes me. Because God did nothing wrong. God didn't need to be forgiven. God didn't need to ask for an apology. But it was how much of a burden it was how much I was holding on to, how much hatred I was for God, believing that God took my dad, where I just needed to say the words out loud, God, I love you, I forgive you, you did nothing wrong, but I am letting go of that pain.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been that authentic with God, whether you've dropped the F-bomb or you've said, God, I forgive you, or you've just approached God head on and said, God, I'm ticked off, I highly encourage it.
And just giving people permission to be that honest with God. And I think it will change your relationship with him.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and I think so often we go through the motions of, I've got to pray just this way. There's this formula. There's this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the real relationship is you can talk to him just like you can anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I think that part there probably set some people free tonight. And
I hope so,
and I love
because it
that.
set me free.
Yeah,
it's
I
cool.
love that. So let's go to Scripture. What are some of the verses, the stories, or things that... Now, I've heard you preach, I don't know how many times now, and it's always, this is my favorite story.
This is my favorite passage.
But the last time, I loved what you said. I'm going to steal it, by the way.
Okay.
Is this week. This is my favorite story.
This is my favorite story. So, just to talk on that for a second, as you spend so much time writing sermons, it's cool how God places new ideas or new approaches to Scripture
every time.
And
every time.
When you are able to preach on that, it does become your favorite Scripture for the week.
It does. It really does.
Yes.
I mean, there was stuff this week that came out.
Exactly.
I've never seen that before.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
It's so cool. And so kind of my monumental verse for my life that really has spoken to me, that is my favorite verse. But it will change. Really, this is what I think sets up the Bible. It's this, Genesis 4:9. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" And this is why this verse is my favorite.
It shocked me when I read this.
I'm sure it did.
I thought, Where is he going to go with this
I'm
one?
sure, okay? But this is why this is my favorite passage. This is the story of Cain and Abel, where Cain has just killed Abel, his brother. It's the first murder on record that we have. And God approaches Cain and asks him the question, Cain, where's your brother? And Cain responds by saying, why would I know? Am I my brother's keeper? And I believe that God then takes that response and has to set up the entire narrative of the Bible by answering that question, yes. You are your brother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. You are your neighbor's keeper. You are the person from the LGBTQ community's keeper. You are someone from Saudi Arabia's keeper. Like, those are the people God calls us to pursue.
Yeah.
And we live in that arrogant mindset of, why would I help them? They're not in my business. And so really why this is my favorite verse is because I see God then unfold and unpack this verse through the life of Jesus, through the life of Moses, Abraham, every person in the Bible saying, if you don't answer that question by saying, yes, I am my brother's keeper, then that is a heart issue that you need to work on.
That's perfect. That'll preach.
Yeah, that'll preach.
That'll preach.
But, the favorite verse, if we ask next week, but I love that
no,
verse.
that's awesome. We just got a few minutes left, so I want to ask you this: is again, what advice do you have for all those out there, just wrestling with what's my next step, or should I take this next step? What is it, and should I take it?
Yeah, the biggest hiccup that I ran into is, what is my next step? Should I take it? Should I apply to Crossbridge? Should I do this? I think when we're taking next steps, one of the things that causes a hiccup is wondering if it's God's calling on our life or if it's our calling, and like wanting to get that exactly right. And what I mean by that is, I'll say it this way. I believe that God, because of our free will, God is more pleased when we do things that we love in a pure heart for his kingdom than when we try to live perfectly according to his plan. I think we run into those mistakes of saying, man, I'm not going to accept this job because I don't know if God is giving me that job or if he's not, or if not. Ask yourself, okay, is it going to make you happier? Yeah. Okay. Are you going to have more opportunities? Yeah. Okay. Do you want this job? Absolutely. Then why wouldn't God want you to have that job?
Right.
I think we're so worried that God is going to be displeased with us. And honestly, if you are pursuing God in next steps, if you are keeping God at your forefront, okay?
At the center of everything.
At the center of everything, I think God is more okay with us doing things that we love than we realize.
Yeah, and I think he wants to put us in those positions.
Yeah, I think God wants us to.
He wants us to live the best life we can.
Yeah, if I wanted to be a history teacher, okay, right out of college, I don't think God would have been upset with me.
Agreed.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think that I am happier in this position than I would have been as a history teacher, but I think God would have seen his child living out something he loved doing, history and teaching, pursuing kids, and saying, man, he is making me pleased.
You would have made more money as a history teacher.
You're not wrong. And so that's the first advice. The last thing for the last couple minutes, last thing is be authentic.
Yeah.
As you're taking next steps, don't take the next steps just to take next steps. Like, don't take a step just because you feel like you have to, or like that's what WWJD, what would Johnny do? My stepbrother, what would they do? All these things. Take the next steps because you have confronted God, you've confronted your life, you've been honest, you are authentic, and this is genuinely something you're passionate about.
Right.
Don't be scared to confront God. Don't be scared to take next steps. That's easier said than done. But those are probably the two biggest things is God wants us to do what we're happy doing as long as he's at the center, and be authentic in all that you do.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate how authentic you've been. It's one of the things that we love about having you around here. And that's the way to live life. Just like Jordan just said, is be authentic, be real, take the next steps, pursue God with everything you got.
Yeah.
Put him at the center. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next week we're going to start. Tell a little bit about what we're going to do next week.
Yeah, next week we're starting a 3-week series, and it's going to be called Sun Stand Still, a walk through the miracles of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it because we're going to be looking at 3 miracles that one miracle each week, just kind of reading the story, talking about it. What does it look like for us today? Just processing some cool stories in the Old Testament, and kind of just make connections how we can see Jesus in different
Yeah.
ways throughout the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So that's going to be next week. Looking forward to it. And then you
I am, yeah,
preaching this week. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's week 3 of our series on guardrails. We've been talking about setting up guardrails in our lives so that we don't get into a danger zone. And I'm talking about guarding your heart this week, and I'm very excited about that. So we're going to do that at 9 o'clock and 10:30 right here at Crossbridge. If you are within driving distance, we'd love to have you. Otherwise, you can tune in on Facebook, and I called it Google earlier, but it is really YouTube, our YouTube channel.
Yes.
I'm old. I can't help it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And can't wait for next week.
Yeah.
All
Hey,
right.
last announcement. Baptism this Sunday.
Oh, it's going to rock,
right
man.
after 10:30. We've got 16 people. Praise God. So exciting. Join us for a free cookout, hanging out. It's going to be fun.
See you next
Thanks
week.
for joining us. See you next week.